I think that Minneapolis is a stronger market. I also think than some other people might assume, and it's such an outlier for all these Midwestern markets. We have tracked it for 3 years. For all 3 years, we've been looking at places like, even Chicago had a little rent bump that Minneapolis didn't. But places like Kansas City, Indianapolis, Columbus.
Man, we've been ripping on Minneapolis for
I know,
the last
and it
couple
feels
years.
bad. And
I like Minneapolis.
Yeah. Steadier there. I like that band. They've got exactly. 1,000 Lakes. They've got you look at the picture.
I like Minnesota.
Yeah, I think that they're
to visit.
Yeah,
maybe I don't. No. It could be great.
Yeah,
I'm just
okay, but that's a good question. There's been a lot of questions on why rent growth has been so poor. Why, if you were an investor in a multifamily property in Minneapolis, you wouldn't be seeing seeing all the great things that maybe someone in Kansas City would have seen. And I think that I'd like to think that was not a reaction to like specific events and more of like a larger trend. And one of these things, so you even mentioned this Bloomberg article that talked about Minneapolis, and I found it last night. It said, first American city to tame inflation owes success to affordable housing. Now this is like via the Seattle Times, but again, a bold headline.
Hold on, okay. So it's the Seattle Times writing.
Yeah. I have that in the tab there, but it's it says it tames inflation and it owes success to affordable housing. My intuition is that some people might interpret taming inflation with just like because people were leaving and they're not spending money. And they might say, again, this is just a speculation. They might say, the cost of living went down because all the people and the businesses left after the George Floyd protests. That's the number one thing I was really curious about. I looked up, I couldn't find a whole lot of things that were specifically saying that like people are fleeing the city. There is of course stuff about like police reforms in the area.
I think that was just overblown.
It may have been. At least it's not as big of a factor as some people think. I think for certain neighborhoods, certainly for certain people, certain businesses.
It wasn't a positive thing for the city.
Yeah, and it definitely wasn't a positive at all. And I've got a couple graphs that I looked at. I looked at GDP and population growth. Now it's very broad. This is a bird's eye view of things. I'm sorry, I have it on the Google Docs here. But if you look at the trend lines for Minneapolis and compare them with a bunch of other Midwestern cities like Chicago, Columbus, what do I have here? Detroit, Madison, Kansas City, Columbus, Minneapolis. And basically, Minneapolis is like middle of the road for population growth, maybe on the lower end. And there's an argument. You could say that there's a correlation between population size and population growth. In that Chicago had low population growth, Detroit, which was number 2 size in the Midwest, had low population growth, and then the number 3 was Minneapolis. It's hard to see in seeing it ranked kind of in the middle of all of these. It doesn't look like everyone was fleeing Minneapolis. It's following very similar trends to other ones. And this kind of the same case is for the GDP. Minneapolis, very much middle of the road. Now I'm not talking about raw GDP or raw population numbers. These graphs are just how much things increased year over year. And the proportional year over year increase, they're all tightly grouped together and following the same trajectories. So again,
so their economy didn't
really plummet. Their population is more aligned with the lagging of like a Chicago.
Yeah.
But definitely not like a dramatic thing you can point to as like.
So it's kind of got like slow growth, like you would see in a big city. But Minneapolis isn't a small city, but it's more akin to I think it's larger than Indianapolis, but I mean, it's more like an Indianapolis than a Chicago.
Totally.